I thought I was documenting a dying town's last harvest. I didn't know I was filming my own funeral. I still can't eat anything that grows in the ground. The therapist says it's psychosomatic. She uses words like trauma response and disassociative episodes. She doesn't understand that some things you see don't just live in your memory. They live in your body, in your throat, in the dirt under your fingernails that never really comes out, no matter how hard you scrub. My name is Marcus Webb, and I used to be a documentary filmmaker. Used to be, past tense, because the person who drove into Ashwood Hollow that September doesn't exist anymore. That version of me died in the fields, even if my body managed to crawl out. I need to tell you what happened there, not because I want to. God knows I'd give anything to forget, but because the town still exists. The fields are still being worked, and if you ever find yourself on Route 17, past the broken mile marker, where the cell service dies and the radio turns to static, you need to keep driving. Don't stop. Don't even slow down. And for Christ's sake, don't accept their hospitality. It started as most disasters do, with good intentions and bad luck. My previous documentary, The Last Meltdown, had done well enough on the festival circuit. Nothing groundbreaking, but it opened some doors. I was hungry for the next project. Something authentic, something that would matter. I'd been researching royalty population in the Midwest when I found a reference to Ashwood Hollow in the Agriculture Department report from 1987. The town wasn't even on Google Maps. Population listed as 247. Unchanged for 40 years. No exports, no industry, no apparent economy. Yet somehow it persisted. I was intrigued. No apparent economy. Yet somehow it persisted. I should have been terrified. The drive took me through increasingly desolate country. Towns with more churches than gas stations. Farmhouses with collapsed roofs and fields gone to seed. By the time I reached the turnoff, a single-lane road barely wider than my van, the landscape had become almost featureless. Just flat plains of dead grass stretching to a gray horizon. The town appeared suddenly as if it had been hiding. One moment there was nothing but empty land. The next I was passing a weather-beaten sign that read Ashwood Hollow Est, 1873, population 247. The number had been hand-painted over several times, always the same. That should have been my first warning. The main street was a study in arrested decay, buildings that looked like they'd been dying for decades but never quite finished the job, a general store with soap-foamed windows, a post office that shared space with what might have been a barber shop. Everything was gray. Gray wood, gray stone, even the sky seemed grayer here, pressing down like a lid, but it was the smell that hit me first. Rich and dark and organic. Like standing in the middle of a compost heap. The smell of things breaking down, transforming, feeding the earth. It coated the back of my throat, thick enough to taste. I parked in front of the general store. As I stepped out, I noticed the people. They appeared in doorways, emerged from between buildings, materialized at windows. Not threatening exactly, but watching. All of them. Men in clothes that looked handmade, poorly. Women with their hair pulled back tight enough to make their faces look skeletal. Children who stood too still, with eyes too old for their faces. None of them smiled. "Help you?" I turned. The man who had spoken was probably 60, but he could have been 40 or 80. The kind of weather that makes age impossible to guess. He wore overalls stained with something dark and rust-colored. His hands were caked with dirt so deep it looked permanent, worked into the creases of his palms like tattoos. "I'm Marcus Webb," I said, extending my hand. "I'm a filmmaker. I'm doing a documentary on small farming communities and their survival strategies." I read about Ashwood Hollow and thought, we don't get visitors. He didn't take my hand. His eyes, a washed-out blue, didn't blink. "Roads not marked. How'd you find us?" "County agricultural reports." I'm hoping to talk to some residents, maybe film the harvest season. I can pay for interviews and I won't. Harvest season. He said it flat, without inflection. Then something changed in his face. Not a smile, something worse. You're here for the harvest. Well, yes, if that's okay. I have all my permits and Samuel. He called over his shoulder. A younger man appeared, maybe 30, with the same worn features, the same dirt-stained hands. Get Margaret. Tell her we have a guest. A documentarian. He wants to see the harvest. The way he said documentarian, like he was tasting the word, testing it. That's great, I said. I really appreciate you'll stay with the Merricks, the older man said. It wasn't a question. Margaret and John, they have the room. You'll film what you need to film. You'll see what you need to see. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell him. Earth and sweat and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. But you film everything, he said quietly. Every part of the harvest. Otherwise, there's no point in you being here. You understand? I didn't. But I nodded anyway. That was my second mistake. The first was coming at all. The Merrick house sat at the edge of town where the buildings gave way to fields. Vast fields stretching into the distance, divided by irrigation ditches and wooden stakes. Even in the fading light, I could see the crops were thriving. Unnaturally so. The corn stood 12 feet tall, stalks thick as a man's arm. The wheat was so heavy it bent under its own weight. Vegetables I couldn't name grew in such abundance. They seemed to pulse with vitality. In the middle of this dying region, Ashwood Hollow's fields were paradise. Margaret Merrick was a thin woman with hollow cheeks and hands that never stopped moving. She showed me to a small room upstairs with a window that overlooked the fields. The room was clean but ancient. A metal bed frame, a dresser with a cracked mirror, wallpaper that had faded to the color of old bone. Dinner's at 6, she said, standing in the doorway. She wouldn't come fully into the room. We eat together, all of us. It's important. All of you. The town. During harvest season, we eat together, share the food, share the blessing. Her fingers twisted in her apron. You'll understand soon. She left before I could ask what that meant. I spent the next hour unpacking my equipment, testing shots from the window. The light was strange here, flat and sourceless, making everything look two-dimensional. Through the viewfinder, the fields looked even more wrong. Too green, too alive. And there was movement at the edges of the frame, subtle shifts in the soil, like something was disturbing it from below. I told myself it was wind, ground settling. Anything but what it looked like. At 6, I went downstairs. The dining room was larger than I expected, with a table that could seat 20. And it was full. The entire town seemed to be there, crowded around platters of food, roasted vegetables glistening with butter, fresh bread that steamed when broken open, corn so sweet the kernels burst between your teeth, potatoes in their jackets, flesh yellow as egg yolk. Everyone was eating with an intensity that felt almost violent, fingers tearing at the bread, teeth grinding through corn cobs. The sound of chewing filled the room like static. John Merrick, Margaret's husband, gestured to an empty seat. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with a face like weathered stone. Sit, eat. You need your strength. I sat. The food smelled incredible. That rich, earthy smell, but underneath it something else. Something I couldn't quite place. Margaret put a plate in front of me, piled high with vegetables, with bread, with things I didn't recognize. Eat, she said softly. Please, it's important that you eat. Around the table, everyone had stopped their own eating. They were watching me. I picked up a fork. speared a piece of carrot. It was tender, almost melting. I raised it to my mouth and stopped, because in the window reflection behind Margaret, I saw something, just for a second. The carrot on my fork wasn't orange. It was dark red, the color of old blood, and it was moving, pulsing. I blinked, looked down. The carrot was normal, orange and still, and perfectly ordinary. Is something wrong? John asked. No, it looks delicious. I ate the carrot. It tasted like earth, rich and dark and full of minerals. I ate the potatoes, the bread, the corn, everything they put in front of me, because their eyes never left my face, and some animal part of my brain understood that refusing would be dangerous. When dinner ended, I excused myself quickly, went back to my room, locked the door, stood at the window, breathing hard, trying to understand what I'd seen, what I'd tasted. The fields were different at night. The crops seemed to glow faintly, phosphorescent in the darkness, and the movement I'd noticed earlier was more pronounced. The soil shifted and settled, rose and fell, like the earth was breathing. I watched for hours, and slowly I began to see the pattern. The movement wasn't random. It was localized. Specific patches of earth, roughly rectangular, spaced in even intervals throughout the fields. 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, the exact dimensions of a grave. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those patches of moving earth, heard sounds that might have been wind through the crops or might have been something else. Something human, something suffering. When dawn came, gray and cold, I was already dressed. I took my camera and went down to the fields. Up close, they were even more wrong. The crops were too perfect. No blight, no insects, no imperfections at all. The leaves were thick and waxy, the stalks unnaturally robust. I knelt beside a patch of corn and pushed my fingers into the soil. It was warm, body temperature, and soft loose like it had been recently disturbed. I dug deeper. 6 inches, a foot. My fingers touched something that wasn't soil, fabric. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned, sat there, staring at the dark earth coating my fingers. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around. John Merrick stood behind me, a shovel resting on his shoulder. In the early light, his face looked almost skull-like. The harvest, best we've had in years. Soil's been hungry lately, needs more feeding. What's in the ground, John? What do you think? He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. This is farmland. Things grow, things die, things feed other things. Circle of life. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. He stepped closer. The shovel blade was stained. Old stains, layered and dark. You came here to document us. So document. But you need to understand something first. This town survives because we do what needs to be done. What's always been done. Since the drought came in 1889 and the crops failed and people started starving. He planted the shovel in the ground between us. Old Thomas Ashwood, town founder, he figured it out. The silver here, it's hungry. Not for fertilizer, not for compost, for something else, something specific. Feed it right, and it gives back. Feed it wrong, and everyone dies. So we made a choice. Survival, whatever it takes. You're insane. Now, we're alive. 247 of us, same number for 40 years, because we maintain balance. We feed the soil feeds us, and the numbers stay steady. Perfect mathematics. I started backing away. He didn't follow, just stood there leaning on the shovel, watching me with those flat, dead eyes. You wanted to document the harvest, he said, so tonight you'll see it, all of it, and then you'll understand. You came here for a reason, Marcus, not by accident. The soil called you. It's been too long since we had fresh material. The crops are getting weak. We needed someone from outside, someone healthy, someone who'd come willingly. I ran back to the house, grabbed my keys, my wallet, left everything else. I didn't care about the equipment, the footage, any of it. I just needed to get out. My van was parked on the main street. I could see it from 2 blocks away. I was almost there when the children appeared. They came from everywhere. Doorways, alleys, from behind buildings, moving in that two-still way, silent and coordinated. They formed a line between me and the van, 12 of them, maybe 15, all between 6 and 10 years old, all holding tools, rakes, hoes, shears. Please, I said, I just want to leave. The smallest one, a girl with blonde hair and a face like a porcelain doll, tilted her head. You haven't seen the harvest yet. You have to see the harvest. Otherwise, there's no point. I don't want to see it. Please, just let me go. Can't, she said simply. The soil's already been prepared. Your bed's already dug. It's waiting for you. I tried to run past them. Made it 3 steps before something hit the back of my knees. I went down hard, face first into the dirt. Before I could get up, they were on me, small hands, impossibly strong, holding me down. I felt the sharp edge of a whole blade against my ankle, not cutting, just pressing, a promise. Don't fight, the girl whispered in my ear. Fighting makes the roots grow bitter. You want to be sweet. Sweet crops feed more people. Make your death mean something. They dragged me to a building I hadn't noticed before. A bar maybe, or a storage house. Inside it was dark and cool and smelled like the fields. Like earth and growth and decay. They threw me into a corner. I heard a door slam. A lock turn. I sat in the darkness, listening to my own breathing, and waited for night. They came for me when the sun set. 4 men, including John Merrick and the older man from the general store. They didn't speak. Just pulled me to my feet, half carried, half dragged me out into the fields. The entire town was there, all 247 of them, standing in a circle around a freshly dug section of earth. In the center, 6 rectangular holes, 6 graves. 5 of them were already occupied. I could see them from where the man held me. People in the homes, bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror. One was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. Another was thrashing against the ropes, making the soil crumble down around him. They were strangers. Travelers probably, like me. People who'd made the mistake of finding this town. We usually do this in spring and fall, John said conversationally. 6 in April, 6 in September. Keeps the soil rich, keeps the balance. But we've had some losses lately. Natural deaths, the ratio's been off. So we need 7 this harvest. Lucky number 7. They dragged me toward the empty grave. I fought, thrashing and kicking and screaming, but there were too many of them and they moved with the coordination of long practice. Within seconds, they had me bound, wrists behind my back, ankles together, a gag that tasted like dirt and made me retch. They lowered me into the hole. It was deeper than I expected. 7 feet, maybe 8. The sides were smooth, almost polished. The bottom was soft, covered in something that might have been peat moss or might have been something else. Above me, I could see the darkening sky, the faces of the townspeople looking down, expressionless, waiting. The old way was to bury them completely, John said. Cover them up and let them suffocate. But we found that didn't produce the best yields. Fear makes the blood acidic, ruins the soil chemistry, so we adapted, evolved, found a better method. Someone handed him a bucket. He tilted it, showing me the contents. Seeds, thousands of them, mixed with something wet and dark. Me plant you partial, he explained. Soil up to your chest, arms and legs buried so you can't dig out, but head above ground so you can breathe, so you can see and hear and understand what's happening. He knelt at the edge of my grave, poured some of the seed mixture around my legs. I could feel it, cold and wet, seeping through my clothes. The seeds are special, cultivated for over a century. They germinate fast, really fast. Within hours, you'll feel the roots. They're small at first, thin as hair. They grow down, finding moisture, finding nutrients, but they also grow up into you through any opening they can find. And once they're in, they don't stop. They spread through your tissue, through your veins, converting you into food, into soil, into life for the crops. He smiled. It was almost gentle. Most people last 3 days. Some make it to 5 if they're strong. The longer you last, the better the harvest. So we encourage you to hold on, to fight, because your suffering, your slow conversion from human to earth, that's what makes the crop so vital. Your fear, your pain, your desperate will to live, it all goes into the soil, enriches it, makes everything that grows here taste like life itself. They began filling in the grave. Soil poured around my legs, my waist, my chest, packing it down, tamping it firm. I screamed against the gag, thrashed until my muscles burned, but the earth just kept coming, swallowing me, claiming me. When they finished, only my head and neck were above ground. I was part of the field now. Another crop, another sacrifice to keep Ashwood Hollow alive. John scattered seeds around my neck, pressed them gently into the soil. Grow well, he whispered. Feed us, give us life. Then they were gone, all of them, walking back to town in a silent procession, leaving us alone in the fields. The 6 of us. 6 heads sticking up from the earth like grotesque vegetables. The first hour was the worst, the panic, the animal terror of being trapped. I pulled against the soil until I felt something tear in my shoulder. Screamed until my throat was raw, tried to dig myself out with my chin, scraping my face bloody against the earth. Nothing worked. The soil held me like concrete. Around me, the others were doing the same, thrashing, screaming into their gags. One of them, a middle-aged woman to my left, was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Another, a young man, had gone silent. His eyes were open, but I don't think he was seeing anything anymore. Night fell completely. The temperature dropped. I could feel the cold seeping up from the ground, from the earth that surrounded me, from the soil that was slowly becoming my grave. And then I felt the first root. It was exactly like John described, thin as hair, tickling against my lower back where my shirt had ridden up. At first I thought it was an insect, but then it moved with purpose, probing, searching, and then it found skin. The sensation was indescribable, not quite pain, not quite pressure, something in between, a foreign presence pushing into my flesh, burrowing, growing. I screamed. The woman next to me screamed. We all screamed, a chorus of muffled agony rising from the field. The roots came faster after that. Dozens of them. Hundreds. I could feel them in my legs, my back, my arms, threading through muscle tissue, wrapping around bone. Some were thicker, forcing their way in with brutal insistence. Others were thin, almost gentle, but there were so many of them. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was becoming something else. A host, a feeding ground, a transition point between human and harvest. The pain built slowly, hours of increasing pressure, of things growing where they shouldn't grow, of my own cells being consumed and converted. I felt my blood flow changing, becoming thicker as the roots tapped into my veins and began to drink. By dawn, I could feel them in my stomach, in my chest, spreading to my torso like a cancer that grew inches per hour instead of millimeters per month. The young man 2 graves over had stopped moving. His eyes were still open, but he wasn't breathing. I watched a thin tendril emerge from his nostril. Green and delicate, it waved in the morning air like it was tasting the wind. Around noon, I felt a root touch my heart. It didn't penetrate, just pressed against it. A gentle reminder that my life was temporary, that soon this organ would stop and the roots would consume it, and I would become the field completely. I wanted to die. God, I wanted to die, but my body kept fighting, kept breathing, kept my heart pumping blood that fed the roots that were killing me. The second night was delirium, fever dreams, and hallucinations. I saw my mother, dead for 10 years, standing in the field. Saw my ex-wife. Saw people I'd wronged, and people I'd loved, and people I'd forgotten. They all stood silently, watching me die. The roots had reached my throat by then. I could feel them inside my esophagus, growing up toward my mouth. Sometimes I could taste them, like soil and copper. The woman next to me died on the 3rd morning. I watched it happen, watched the light leave her eyes, watched a thick root emerge from her mouth, unfurling like a tongue. 2 hours later, the crops around her grave visibly grew, shot up 6 inches. The leaves darkened to a rich, deep green. The stalks thickened. She was feeding them. Her death was making them strong. I realized then that I was going to die. Really die. Not in some abstract future sense. Here, dim, converted into nutrients for crops that would feed the people who killed me. The thought should have broken me. Maybe it did. I don't remember much of the 3rd day. Just pain and fever and the constant sensation of growing things inside me. But somewhere in that delirium, I had a moment of clarity. The gag. It had loosened. Days of working my jaw, of grinding my teeth against it, of letting the roots push it outward from the inside. It had shifted. Not much, but enough. I worked at it. Slowly. Careful not to alert anyone who might be watching. Took hours, maybe a full day. Time had stopped meaning anything, but eventually it came free. I sucked in air, real air, deep breaths that made the roots of my chest shift and writhe, and I screamed. Not muffled, not contained. I screamed with everything I had left. Screamed for help, for God, for anyone who might hear. Help me. Someone please. My voice was shredded, barely human, but it carried across the fields. Nothing happened. The town stayed silent. I screamed until I couldn't anymore, until my voice gave out completely, and then I heard it. An engine, distant, getting closer. A car. On the road. Someone was coming. I found my voice again. Help. I'm in the fields. Please, help. The engine got louder. Closer. Then it stopped. I heard a car door open. Close. Footsteps. Running. Getting closer. Oh my God. Oh Jesus Christ. What the fuck? A man's face appeared above me. Maybe. Wearing a state highway maintenance uniform. His face was white with shock. I've got you. Hold on. I'm calling. He pulled out his phone. Looked at it. Fuck. No signal. Okay. I'm going to dig you out. He ran to his truck. Came back with a shovel. This is going to hurt, he said. But I have to. He started digging. Fast. Frantic. The soil came away in chunks. And the roots fought back. I felt them tighten. Constrict. They knew I was trying to escape. The pain was incredible. I felt things tearing inside me, ripping free. Blood filled my mouth. Almost there. Almost the soil gave way. My upper body came free. The maintenance worker grabbed me under the arms, pulled. The roots didn't want to let go. I screamed as they ripped out of my flesh, felt them slide out of wounds. My legs, my stomach, some broke off inside me. Others pulled free completely, trailing behind me like umbilical cords. I collapsed on the ground, bleeding from a dozen places, maybe more. The maintenance worker was talking, saying something about hospitals and ambulances, but I couldn't focus on his words, because I could see the town now, the people. They were coming, walking out of their houses, out of the general store, all of them, moving toward us with that same silent coordination. We need to go, I gasped. Now. They'll. Who will? What is this place? What happened to now? He looked up, saw them coming. His face went pale. He half carried, half dragged me to his truck, threw me in the passenger seat. The people were close now, 50 feet, 40, not running, just walking. But their eyes were flat and hungry and determined. The engine turned over. Thank God it turned over. We pulled away as the first of them reached the truck. Hands slacked against the windows, the sides. One of them, the little blonde girl, stood in the road ahead of us, rake held across her body like a barricade. The maintenance worker didn't slow down. She dove aside at the last second. We accelerated past her, past the town, onto the main road. I watched through the rear window as Ashwood Hollow receded, watched the people standing in the middle of the street. Not chasing, just watching us go. We drove for an hour before we found a place with cell service. The maintenance worker, his name was David, he called 911, told them about the fields, about the graves, about the 5 people still there. The police came, the FBI. They raided Ashwood Hollow 3 days later. The town was empty. Every building, every house, every field, completely abandoned. No sign of the 247 residents, no sign of where they'd gone, but the fields were full. They found 73 graves, 73 people, all in various stages of decomposition or transformation. Because the roots were real, the investigators documented it all. Bodies converted into nutrient sources, root systems that spread through human tissue. A symbiotic relationship between plant and human that defied biological understanding. They burned the fields, all of them, salted the earth, made sure nothing would ever grow there again. But I know it's still there, the seeds, the roots, waiting in the soil, waiting for people to forget, to rebuild, to plant again. I spent 4 months in the hospital, 27 surgeries to remove the roots that had grown into me, the ones in my major organs, the ones wrapped around my spine, the ones that had fused with my ribs. The doctor said I'm lucky to be alive. They don't understand that what I am now isn't alive. Not really. I'm something in between. Part human, part harvest, part victim, part soil. I can feel them sometimes. The roots that are still in me. The pieces they couldn't remove without killing me. They're dormant, dead, the doctors say. But I know better. On warm days when the sun is strong, I feel them shift, trying to grow, trying to spread. I don't eat vegetables anymore. Can't. The smell makes me vomit. The taste makes me remember being in the ground, feeling things grow through me, feeding on my slow death. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear them. The 5 people I left behind, still screaming in the fields, still feeding the crops, still dying inch by inch, cell by cell. The woman next to me, the young man, the others. I don't even know their names. I try to tell myself they're dead by now, that it's been months, that they can't still be alive. But I remember what John said. Some people last 5 days, and I remember the crops. How vibrant they were, how vital, how sweet they tasted at that first dinner when I didn't know what I was eating. I haven't been back. I'll never go back. But sometimes I dream about it. Dream I'm in the ground again. Dream I can feel the roots growing, spreading, consuming, converting me from human to harvest. And when I wake up, I'm not always sure which world is real. The one where I escaped, or the one where I'm still there, buried to my neck, watching the crops grow tall and green and strong in my slow death, feeding Ashwood Hollow. Forever.